All right, welcome back to Reflections, everyone, where we talk about all things Church of Christ with the Elijah Message. It is wonderful to be back with you, spending this time together. So we've been focusing for a little while on the Latter-day Saint perspective, and I want to talk about a few more things. I want to talk about this really interesting idea called the pre-existence, this idea that we existed in heaven before we existed on the earth. And I want to turn to the prophet Jeremiah in the first chapter, the calling of Jeremiah. And picking up here in verse 4. Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. I purified to make you holy. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And that's an interesting passage about God knowing us before we were. So let's go to the Doctrine and Covenants, section 90. And we're going to be picking up in paragraph 5. Man was also in the beginning with God. Intelligence, or the light of truth, was not created or made, neither indeed can it be. All truth is independent in that sphere in which God has placed it, to act for itself, as all intelligence also. Otherwise, there is no existence. Behold, here is the agency of man, and here is the condemnation of man, because that which was from the beginning is plainly manifest unto them, and they receive not the light. And every man whose spirit receiveth not the light is under condemnation, for man is spirit. That's an interesting passage. There's a word play between light, truth, and intelligence, and they all seem to kind of mean or reflect the same thing. And what's interesting, when the prophet Joseph Smith is experiencing or receiving prophetic revelations and visions, he's getting these glimpses behind the veil. And it's up to us to really extract the meaning from them. So the question is, what is the relationship between us and God in our pre-existence? One idea is that we are thoughts in the mind of God, who in turn gives us, as thoughts, independence. So we become independent thoughts in the mind of God unto ourselves, who are then embodied. So we are these independent thoughts in the mind of God that are embodied. It's a fascinating idea. Let's go on to paragraph 6. The glory of God is intelligence. In other words, light and truth. And light and truth forsaketh that evil one. Every spirit of man was innocent in the beginning, and God, having redeemed man from the fall, men became again in their infant state, innocent before God. There's a lot of interesting things in there. That man is the glory of God. We are created in the image and likeness of God. And they're innocent. We don't believe in original sin. You're not born or created damned to hell. And there's an interesting passage here, continuing in paragraph 6. And that wicked one cometh and taketh away the light and the truth. Satan, to take away our agency, to take away from ourselves as the glory of God and the image and likeness. Through disobedience from the children of men, and because of the tradition of their fathers. That idea of tradition of fathers comes up in the record of the Nephites. Let's take a look. It usually refers to the Lamanites. Let's go to Mosiah. King Benjamin speaking to his sons here. Chapter 1, verse 5. I say unto you, my sons, were it not for these things which have been kept and preserved by the hand of God, speaking about the law of Moses and the genealogy of their fathers, that we might read and understand of his mysteries, and have his commandments always before our eyes, that even our fathers would have dwindled in unbelief, and we should have been like unto our brethren the Lamanites, which know nothing concerning these things, because they don't have the law of Moses. They didn't have the genealogy of their fathers to know where they came from like the Nephites did. Or even to do not believe in them which they are taught them, because of the traditions of their fathers, which are not correct. So when the Nephites and the Lamanites separated, the Nephites had the records, the Lamanites didn't. So the Lamanites started creating their own traditions instead of the correct traditions that the Nephites had. Let's go on to the book of Alma. Alma chapter 9. This is Alma speaking. Here in verse 16. For there are many promises which is extended to the Lamanites. For it is because of the traditions of their fathers that causeth them to remain in their state of ignorance. Therefore the Lord will be merciful unto them, and prolong their existence in the land. And at some point of time they will be brought to believe in his word, and to know the incorrectness of the traditions of their fathers. And many of them will be saved, for the Lord will be merciful unto all who call on his name. And we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on, that the ancestors of the Nephites and the Lamanites are the Native Americans. And the Native Americans will come to a knowledge of their forefathers. And they will come to a knowledge of the record of the Nephites. There's this interesting idea too. It's called the veil of forgetfulness. So as we go from our premortal existence to being embodied in temporal existence on the earth, we go through this veil of forgetfulness where we don't remember we were in heaven. And the purpose of that is so that it doesn't interfere in our agency. It doesn't interfere in our ability to make choices, to choose between two opposing choices. And we've talked about how we have to separate from heaven to know the glories of heaven. We have to be separated from God to know the goodness of God. And so as we are separated, we go from knowledge to faith. And faith is important because it helps us choose. We choose to have faith. And we choose to continually seek God to continually seek his righteousness. You know, we talked about that when we talked about why we have faith instead of knowledge. You know, there's a loss of quality in knowledge. When you learn something and you know it, you kind of move on. You know, diligently seek, because you already know, but faith, you don't stop seeking, and that's the important part of that. And the veil reminds me of the veil in the temple that separates the Holy of Holies from everything else. And what is the Holy of Holies? It's the Garden of Eden. And that's what perhaps the veil of forgetfulness does. It separates us from the absolute pureness of heaven, from temporal existence, this like fallen state. My brothers and sisters, it's been wonderful spending this time with you, thinking about these things, reflecting about them. Until next time, I invite you into the Elijah Message House.